Ladies and gentlemen, you are living a life that will never happen again. Every second that passes is a second you will never touch twice. And yet, most people act as if they have an endless supply of tomorrow's scrolling, gossiping, waiting for the right time, giving away their energy to people who don't value it. This is the silent tragedy. Not that life is short, but that we waste most of it on what doesn't matter. If you keep living like this, you'll wake up one day realizing you built a life for everyone but yourself. This speech will show you why focusing on yourself is not selfish, but necessary, how to stop trading your hours for emptiness, and how to reclaim your time before it slips into the abyss. Listen until the very end, because the final truth will not just change the way you see your time, it will make you guard it like your life depends on it. Time is not just a measure of seconds ticking on a clock, it is the raw material of your entire life. Every breath you take, every glance you cast, every thought you entertain is drawn from a reservoir that is constantly draining. The cruel beauty of time is that it moves without asking for your permission. You cannot pause it, you cannot store it, and you cannot earn it back once it's gone. And yet, people trade it away carelessly as if it was something that could be replenished. They hand it over to distractions, to obligations that mean nothing, to people who don't value it, and to habits that slowly dull the edge of their own potential. You can always earn more money, you can always rebuild a career, you can even mend a relationship that's fallen apart, but the hour you lost yesterday is gone forever. And that is why time is the purest currency you will ever hold. It doesn't come in neat packages, and it doesn't warn you before it runs out. Every choice you make is an investment of this currency, and whether you realize it or not, you're constantly spending it, either on your own growth or on something that diminishes you. Most people live under the illusion that they have plenty of time. They believe they can waste today because there will always be a tomorrow to make it right. They think they can put off their dreams until the stars align, until the right opportunity comes, until they feel ready. But the right time is a mirage. It's a story we tell ourselves so we can stay comfortable, so we can avoid the fear of starting, so we can keep numbing ourselves with things that don't matter. And while we wait, the days keep disappearing. What makes this even more dangerous is that wasting time often doesn't feel like wasting time. It's easy to recognize when you've thrown away money, you can see the number drop in your account. But time slips through your fingers silently. You might spend an entire day scrolling through meaningless posts, lost in the noise of other people's lives, and at the end of it, you'll tell yourself you were resting or keeping up. But what you were really doing was handing away hours you could have spent building the life you say you want. You need to understand something uncomfortable. Life will not wait for you to get serious. The world is not going to pause so you can catch your breath. Think about your options or find yourself. Opportunities will pass by, seasons will change, and before you realize it, you will have moved from someday I will to I wish I had. The only real control you have over your life is in how you spend the hours in front of you right now. The tragedy is that many people know this in theory, but refuse to act on it in practice. They'll nod when you tell them time is precious. They'll agree when they hear someone say life is short, but then they'll go home and do exactly what they did yesterday, give their attention to people who drain them, sink hours into entertainment that adds nothing to their soul, and postpone the work that actually matters. The problem is not that they don't know. The problem is that they treat knowing as enough. If you want to change your life, you have to see your time as the most valuable thing you own. You have to guard it with the same ferocity you would guard your last breath. That means being ruthless about what gets your attention. It means asking yourself, before you say yes to anything, is this worth a piece of my life? Because every yes to the wrong thing is a no to something that could move you forward. And here's the truth that will sting a little. No one else will value your time if you don't. If you're always available, if you let people dump their problems on you without boundaries, if you allow yourself to be pulled into every distraction and every drama, you are teaching the world that your time has no worth. And the world will believe you You will become the person people go to when they want to waste their own time because they know you'll waste yours with them. The first step is to decide that your hours are sacred. That doesn't mean you can't rest or laugh or be spontaneous. It means you choose those moments intentionally instead of letting them be stolen from you. Rest that is earned through focused work nourishes you. Rest that comes from avoiding your responsibilities only weakens you. One day, sooner than you think, you will look back on this moment as a piece of your history. You will either be proud that you used it to create something meaningful, or you will feel the quiet ache of realizing you let it slip away. Every great achievement, every transformation, every version of yourself you dream about is built in the small, ordinary hours you live today. And once those hours are gone, they are gone forever. You can keep pretending you have time, or you can start living like you don't. The choice is always yours, but the clock doesn't care. It keeps moving whether you do or not. And the more you waste, the more you are quietly choosing a life that will never be fully yours. If you understand that, truly understand it, not just in your mind, but in your bones, you'll stop treating time as something you can casually give away. You'll see it for what it is, the most priceless resource you will ever hold, and the only one you can never get back once it's gone. There's a dangerous misconception in the world today, a belief that focusing on yourself means you're being selfish, self-absorbed, or uncaring. This idea is one of the main reasons people keep giving away their energy, their time, and their attention until there's nothing left for themselves. They fear that if they put themselves first, they will be judged as cold or unkind. But this belief is not only false, it's destructive. The truth is that focusing on yourself is the foundation for any kind of meaningful contribution you can make to the world. If your mind is scattered, if your heart is drained, if your life feels like it's constantly in reaction to the needs and demands of others, you cannot show up fully for anything or anyone. You cannot pour from an empty cup. And yet, most people are trying to do exactly that, giving more than they have, offering support they can't sustain, chasing after the approval of others while their own well-being falls apart in the background. When you choose to focus on yourself, you're not abandoning the people you care about, you're strengthening the very person they rely on. Think about it this way. If you're physically unwell, you can't run to help someone who's in trouble. If you're mentally exhausted, you can't offer clarity to someone lost in confusion. If you're emotionally depleted, you can't give comfort without it taking something vital from you. To truly be there for others, you have to first be there for yourself. Self-focus is about responsibility, not neglect. It's about recognizing that you are the steward of your own life and that no one else can make the choices that shape your future. It's about knowing your needs, protecting your energy, and setting boundaries that allow you to grow instead of being drained. When you do this, you begin to live intentionally instead of reactively. You're no longer swayed by every opinion, no longer dragged into every storm that isn't yours, no longer guilty for saying no when your plate is already full. Many people get caught in the trap of thinking that being good means always being available, always putting others first, always sacrificing their own needs for someone else's comfort. But what they don't see is that this constant sacrifice eventually leads to resentment, burnout, and a quiet bitterness that seeps into every interaction. You start to lose yourself. You forget what you wanted, what you enjoyed, what made you feel alive because you spent so long building your life around everyone else's needs. By focusing on yourself, you start to reclaim that. You give yourself the space to ask important questions. Who am I when no one else is defining me? What do I actually want to create with the time I have left? What kind of person do I want to become? These questions are not selfish. They are the compass points that keep you from getting lost in a life that doesn't belong to you. There's another truth most people don't want to admit. You teach others how to treat you by the way you treat yourself. If you constantly put yourself last, you send the message that your time and energy are worth less than everyone else's. If you neglect your needs, you signal that they don't matter. But when you set boundaries, when you prioritize your well-being, when you say no to what drains you and yes to what nourishes you, you model a healthier way of living. You show others through your actions that self-respect is not optional. It's essential. Focusing on yourself doesn't mean cutting everyone off or living in isolation. It means being selective with what and who you give your attention to. It means understanding that your time is a finite resource and that every moment spent is shaping the life you will one day look back on. It means having the courage to step back from situations, relationships, and habits that keep you stuck, even if it makes other people uncomfortable. Because your job is not to make everyone else comfortable. Your job is to live the life you were given as fully and authentically as you can. When you begin to prioritize yourself, you might notice that some people resist this change. Those who benefited from your constant availability might accuse you of being distant, cold, or self-centered. This is because your boundaries disrupt the dynamic they were comfortable with. But here's the thing. You don't owe anyone access to your life at the cost of your peace. The people who truly care about you will respect the fact that you are choosing to grow. Those who don't were only there for what they could take, not for who you truly are. The irony is that when you do focus on yourself, when you build your health, your clarity, your emotional strength, you actually have more to give. Your presence becomes richer. Your advice becomes wiser. Your energy is no longer scattered but concentrated. And people feel that. You stop giving out of obligation and start giving from a place of abundance. And that kind of giving has far more impact than the exhausted, resentful, I have no choice giving that comes from self-neglect. It's important to remember that the world will always have demands. There will always be someone who needs something, always another crisis, always another task you could say yes to. But if you let every one of those demands dictate how you spend your days, your life will be nothing but a reaction to other people's priorities. And in the end, when you're looking back, you'll realize you never truly lived for yourself. Focusing on yourself is not an act of selfishness. It is an act of responsibility, of preservation, of love for the only life you have. When you strengthen yourself, you strengthen your ability to face challenges, to help others meaningfully, and to create something worthwhile with the short time you've been given. You are the foundation for everything you want to build in life. And if that foundation is weak, nothing else can stand for long. One of the greatest illusions people fall for is the idea that there will be a right time to begin. They imagine that one day conditions will be perfect, when they feel more confident, when they have more money, when they've learned enough, when life finally slows down. They wait for a moment when there will be no doubts, no obstacles, no risks. But here's the uncomfortable truth. That perfect moment will never arrive. Life will never line up neatly to give you a flawless starting point. There will always be uncertainty, always challenges, always something that could go wrong. And if you're waiting for the right time, you're not really waiting, you're hiding. This is why so many people spend years in the same place, repeating the same routines, clinging to the same routines, clinging to the same excuses. They talk about what they'll do someday as if that day is guaranteed to show up. They convince themselves they're being smart by delaying, telling themselves they're preparing, gathering resources, or waiting for a sign. But most of the time, it's not preparation. It's procrastination wearing a disguise. It's fear dressed up as logic. The danger is that while you're waiting, time is moving. Life does not pause so you can feel ready. Opportunities pass by quietly, and the people who seize them aren't the ones who were fully prepared. They're the ones who stepped forward despite their uncertainty. The truth is, readiness is not something you wait for. It's something you build by taking action. You don't become confident by imagining yourself succeeding. You become confident by showing up, trying, failing, and trying again. The illusion of the right time is comfortable because it lets you avoid discomfort. If you tell yourself you're waiting, you don't have to face the fear of failure, rejection, or imperfection. You can keep your dreams in a safe place, untouched by reality, but the longer you wait, the more you train yourself to hesitate. And hesitation becomes a habit that slowly drains your ambition until one day you can't remember why you wanted to start in the first place. Here's the truth. Most people don't want to face. You will never feel fully ready. You will never have all the knowledge, all the skills, or all the courage you think you need. The people you admire, the ones who seem fearless, are not fearless at all. They simply decided to move forward while fear was still in the room. They didn't waste years waiting for fear to disappear, because they understood that fear is part of the journey. Think about the moments in your life when you did take action despite uncertainty. Maybe it was starting a conversation that scared you, applying for a job you weren't sure you could get, or making a change you'd been putting off. Looking back, you probably realized that the fear before starting was far greater than the reality of doing it. That's because our minds exaggerate the unknown. We imagine worst-case scenarios, endless failures, and public humiliation. But when you actually take the first step, the fear loses its grip because you've replaced imagination with experience. Waiting for the right time is also dangerous because life is unpredictable. You don't know how many days you have left. You don't know what will happen tomorrow, next week, or next year. You may be imagining a future where you finally start living, but there's no guarantee that future will come. The only time you can truly control is now. And if you give away now in the hope of a better later, you may never get the chance to live the life you're waiting for. Another trap of this illusion is thinking that conditions outside yourself need to change before you can begin. You tell yourself you need more money, more support, better circumstances. But while resources matter, they are rarely the true reason you haven't started. The real reason is often that you haven't decided to commit fully. When you commit, you start with what you have, you figure things out as you go, and you adapt along the way. Almost no one begins with perfect circumstances. Often find the strength, creativity, and resilience they never would have discovered if they had waited. Perfection is a moving target. Even if the conditions you're waiting for appear, new challenges will show up to replace them. If you think you'll start when you have more time, that extra time will fill with other demands. If you think you'll start when you have more money, you'll find new expenses waiting. If you think you'll start when you're less afraid, you'll realize that fear simply changes shape, it doesn't vanish. This is why the right time is not something you find, it's something you create. You create it by acting today with the resources, courage, and knowledge you already have. You create it by taking imperfect steps and adjusting as you learn. You create it by refusing to let fear, uncertainty, or other people's opinions hold your life hostage. When you stop waiting and start moving, you'll realize that the path reveals itself only after you've taken the first steps, not before. The most successful, fulfilled, and resilient people are not the ones who waited until everything was perfect. They are the ones who understood that starting before you feel ready is the only way to ever be ready. They acted when it was inconvenient, when it was risky, when they had doubts, because they knew the cost of waiting was far greater than the cost of trying. Stop telling yourself you need more time. Stop telling yourself you'll begin when things are better. The best day to start was yesterday. The second best day is today. There will never be a perfect moment, but there is this moment. And if you choose to use it, you will already be ahead of the version of yourself still waiting for the illusion of the right time to appear. Silence is rare in a world that never stops talking. Everywhere you go, there's noise, notifications pulling you into other people's lives, opinions thrown at you from every direction, conversations that go nowhere but still consume your energy. And yet, the truth is that the most important voice you will ever hear is your own, and it's almost impossible to hear it when you're surrounded by constant distraction. This is why learning to cut the noise is not just a preference, it's a necessity if you want to truly know yourself and live a life that feels like yours. We are conditioned to seek stimulation. The moment there's a pause, we reach for something to fill it. a phone, a conversation, a screen. But in doing this, we lose the ability to be still with ourselves. We mistake constant input for productivity, forgetting that absorbing noise is not the same as gaining wisdom. In fact, the more you drown yourself in the voices of others, the less space you have to think your own thoughts. Your mind becomes crowded, and in that crowd, your true desires get lost. Cutting the noise doesn't just mean avoiding obvious distractions like social media or endless entertainment. It also means distancing yourself from people whose energy scatters your focus. There are those who thrive on chaos, who pull you into drama, who need constant attention, but offer nothing in return. Spending time in that environment is like trying to light a candle in the middle of a storm. You can't keep your flame steady long enough to see where you're going. When you don't take time to be with yourself, you end up living in reaction to whatever is loudest around you. You find yourself chasing goals you didn't set, adopting opinions you didn't form, and living by standards you didn't choose. Slowly, your life becomes an echo of other people's expectations, instead of an expression of your own truth. This is the quiet tragedy of distraction. It steals your life without you realizing it. There's a reason some of your best ideas have come to you when you were away from your phone, walking alone, or simply sitting in silence. In those moments, your mind is not busy absorbing external noise. It's finally free to wander, to reflect, to connect the dots between what you've learned and what you want. Creativity, clarity, and self-awareness all grow in silence, but you have to make space for that silence to exist. Cutting the noise can be uncomfortable at first. When you've been used to constant stimulation, silence feels awkward, even lonely. You may find yourself restless, wanting to fill the gap. That's because, for the first time, you're hearing what's underneath the noise, your fears, your doubts, your unanswered questions. Many people run from this because it forces them to confront the truth about their lives. But if you want growth, you have to be willing to face those truths. Silence is not empty. It's full of the answers you've been avoiding. You might be surprised by how much of your mental clutter comes from things you never needed to engage with in the first place. Gossip about people you barely know. Arguments over issues that don't affect your daily life. Opinions from strangers online. All of it takes up space in your mind, leaving less room for your own priorities. By cutting these things out, you're not missing anything valuable. You're making room for what actually matters. The key is to be deliberate about what gets your attention. If your attention is a garden, you have to protect it from weeds. Every piece of noise you allow in is a seed. Some will grow into insight, others into confusion. You get to choose what you plant, but only if you're paying attention. This means saying no to unnecessary conversations, logging off when the noise becomes overwhelming, and creating intentional moments of stillness every day. As you cut the noise, you'll start to notice something powerful. Your decisions become clearer. You're no longer swayed so easily by trends, peer pressure, or fear of missing out. You'll begin to trust your instincts more because you can actually hear them. Your energy will feel less scattered because you're no longer pouring it into things that don't move you forward. And with that clarity comes a deep sense of peace, not the kind that comes from avoiding problems, but the kind that comes from living in alignment with yourself. Some people will not understand why you're choosing to step back from the noise. They might take it personally or think you're becoming distant. But this is not about shutting the world out. It's about tuning in to what's real for you. Those who respect your growth will respect your need for space. Those who don't will simply reveal that they were more interested in your attention than in your well-being. When you give yourself the gift of silence, you reclaim something the modern world has stolen from most people: the ability to think deeply. You start making choices based on what feels right for your life, not what everyone else is shouting at you to do. You stop being pulled in 100 directions and begin walking a path that actually leads somewhere you want to go. Cutting the noise is not about living in isolation. It's about living with intention. It's about making sure that the loudest voice in your life is the one that actually has your best interest at heart, your own. The world will always be noisy, but you don't have to live inside that noise. You can step back, breathe, and listen. And in that quiet, you might just hear the life you were meant to live calling you forward. Your energy is the fuel that drives everything you do in life, and it is not limitless. Every day you wake up with a certain amount of mental, emotional, and physical energy, and every choice you make is an investment of that energy. But most people spend it carelessly on things that drain them, on problems that aren't theirs, on obligations that don't matter, on distractions that lead nowhere. They forget that energy, once wasted, doesn't magically replenish itself. Yes, you can rest and recharge, but the hours you lost are gone. And the momentum you could have built in those hours is gone with them. Think about it like a bank account. If you had a limited amount of money and knew you could never earn more than a set amount each day, would you spend it on things that bring no return? Would you hand it away to people who give nothing back? Would you throw it at meaningless purchases just because they were in front of you? Of course not. Yet with energy, people do this constantly. They pour it into arguments that lead nowhere, into gossip that benefits no one, into scrolling endlessly through the lives of strangers while their own life stands still. Every yes you give to something is a no to something else. If you spend hours pleasing people who don't appreciate you, that's time you didn't spend building the life you want. If you exhaust yourself on projects that don't align with your goals, that's focus you didn't give to your own dreams. If you waste emotional energy on resentment, jealousy, or petty conflicts, that's energy you didn't put toward growth, learning, or meaningful connection. The truth is, most people are not defeated by a lack of opportunity, they are defeated by a lack of energy. Not because the energy isn't there, but because it's being spent in the wrong places. When you waste energy on the unimportant, you don't have enough left for what actually matters. And over time, this creates a life where you feel constantly tired, constantly overwhelmed, constantly behind, not because life is harder for you, but because you've been investing your energy in things that give you nothing in return. To spend energy wisely, you have to become intentional. That starts with asking yourself a simple but powerful question. Is this worth my energy? Not just your time, your energy. Because something can take only a few minutes yet leave you drained for hours afterward. A conversation filled with negativity, a pointless argument online, a small task that spirals into a mental burden. These things may seem minor, but they eat away at the fuel you need for your real work. Being intentional with your energy also means setting boundaries without guilt. There will always be people who want more from you than you can give. Some will genuinely need your help, but others will see your time and energy as something they are entitled to. You have to recognize the difference. Helping people is a good thing, but sacrificing your own well-being for those who are unwilling to help themselves is not kindness, it's self-destruction. You are not responsible for carrying everyone, and you cannot fix people who don't want to change. It's also important to realize that not everything that asks for your energy deserves it. Just because something is urgent doesn't mean it's important. Just because someone is loud doesn't mean they're worth listening to. Just because a situation feels dramatic doesn't mean you need to be involved. Every moment you resist being pulled into what doesn't matter is a moment you save for what does. Spending energy wisely doesn't mean living without joy. It means choosing joy that nourishes you instead of drains you. There's a difference between rest that replenishes you and rest that numbs you. There's a difference between connecting with people who inspire you and wasting time with people who keep you small. When you make this distinction, you begin to realize that energy management is really life management. The people who achieve the most with their time are not always the most talented or the most intelligent. They are the most focused. They understand that their energy is a precious resource, so they guard it. They know where it's going each day, and they are willing to let go of anything that takes from them without giving back. This is not selfishness, it's discipline. And discipline is what turns potential into reality. If you want to transform your life, you have to start protecting your energy like it's your most valuable possession, because it is. You have to be willing to say no, to step back, to walk away from things that drain you, even if they've been part of your life for years. That's the hard part. Realizing that some of your biggest energy leaks might be disguised as comfort, routine, or even love. But the moment you patch those leaks, you'll notice a shift. You'll have more clarity. You'll feel less overwhelmed. You'll start making progress where before there was only stagnation. Your dreams require energy. Your goals require energy. Your health, your relationships, your growth, they all require energy. And the truth is, you already have enough to create the life you want. You just have to stop spending it on things that keep you stuck. Your energy is your life. Where you put it determines the shape of your days, the quality of your relationships, the depth of your achievements. Spend it with care, because once it's gone, and no one else will guard it for you. You must be the one to protect it. Every choice you make is either fueling your growth or feeding your distractions. Choose wisely, because those choices will become your life. From the moment you were born, the world began telling you who you should be. Parents, teachers, friends, strangers, each with their own vision of the right way to live. And most of us, without even realizing it, spend our lives chasing approval, trying to match some picture in other people's minds. We adjust our clothes, our words, our ambitions, and sometimes even our personalities, hoping to hear the words, "You're doing great," or "I'm proud of you." But here's the uncomfortable truth. The applause you seek is temporary, and the people you're trying to please will move on to their own concerns while you're left living a life that doesn't feel like yours. People's opinions are like the wind, constantly shifting. What they cheer for today, they may criticize tomorrow. One person's success is another person's waste of time. If you live your life trying to win everyone's approval, you're building a house on sand. You will always be adjusting, never stable, never secure in yourself. And no matter how hard you try, someone will still disapprove. That's the nature of opinions. They are reflections of other people's values, insecurities, and experiences, not an absolute truth about you. When you tie your worth to what others think, you give them the power to control your emotions. A single compliment can lift you, but a single insult can crush you. You become like a puppet on invisible strings, moving according to their praise or criticism. This is no way to live, not if you want to experience real freedom. True freedom comes from defining your value internally, from knowing who you are and standing firm in that truth, whether people clap for you or walk away. The irony is that even the people whose approval you work so hard to earn are not thinking about you as much as you believe. Most are too busy worrying about their own lives to keep track of your every decision. Yet we give so much of our energy to wondering, what will they think? We hesitate to take risks, to speak our minds, to follow our passions, all because of a fear that often exists more in our imagination than in reality. It's worth asking yourself, if the entire world was silent, if no one could judge or comment, what would you choose to do with your life? What would you create? Who would you become? That answer, that pure, unfiltered answer, is closer to your truth than anything the world has tried to give you. And the more you live in alignment with that truth, the less weight other people's opinions will carry. This doesn't mean you should ignore all feedback. There's wisdom in listening, in being open to new perspectives. But there's a difference between considering advice and living for approval. One strengthens you, the other weakens you. Listening to others is useful when it expands your vision. Obeying others out of fear only shrinks it. You have to understand that the opinions of others fade quickly. That person whose judgment you fear. In a year, they may not even remember what you did. That group you want so badly to impress, they will move on to the next thing that catches their attention. But you have to live with the results of your choices. You're the one who wakes up every day in the life those choices built. And if that life was built to please others, it will always feel like a costume, something you wear to be seen, but not something that truly fits. The most dangerous part of chasing approval is that it can disguise itself as ambition. You may think you're working hard for your dreams, but if you're honest, are those dreams really yours? Or are they a collection of expectations handed to you by family, peers, or society? The difference matters, because when you pursue what's yours, the journey fuels you. When you pursue what's not, the journey drains you. No matter how much you achieve, the moment you stop chasing approval, something incredible happens. You start making choices based on what feels right, not what looks right. You start creating work that excites you, not work that simply earns applause. You start living for fulfillment rather than recognition. And the strange thing, often when you stop trying to please everyone, you actually gain more respect. People are drawn to authenticity, even if they don't always agree with it. Letting go of approval is easier said than done. We're wired to seek belonging. It's part of our survival instinct. But belonging doesn't require approval. It requires connection. And connection comes from honesty, from showing up as yourself. Some people will reject that. Let them. The ones who remain will be the ones who see you, not a performance you put on for their benefit. You have one life. One. It's too precious to hand over to the shifting tides of public opinion. The people who truly matter will not demand that you shrink to fit their comfort. They will celebrate your growth, even when it looks different from their own. And those who can't accept that, their disapproval is not a loss. It's space made for people who will support you without condition. People's opinions fade into the background. The loudest voice you'll hear at the end of your life will be your own, asking whether you lived in a way that was true to you. Make sure the answer is yes. Because when the crowd goes silent, you're left with the reality you built. And that reality should be one you're proud to call your own. Discipline is the invisible bridge between where you are and where you want to be. Without it, your days dissolve into scattered intentions and unfinished plans. You can have all the talent, all the passion, all the dreams in the world, but without the ability to consistently direct your time toward meaningful action, those things will remain only possibilities, never realities. Discipline is what transforms a vague hope into a concrete achievement. It's the structure that takes your limited time and shapes it into progress. We often romanticize motivation. We wait for it, chase it, hope it shows up in the morning like a spark that will light the whole day. But motivation is fickle. It comes and goes with your mood, your environment, even the weather. Discipline, on the other hand, is steady. It's the decision to act, not because you feel like it, but because you've committed to it. Discipline doesn't ask, do I want to? It simply says, it's time to do it. When you live without discipline, you live at the mercy of your impulses. The things that are easy will always win over the things that are important. You'll drift toward what feels comfortable instead of what will actually move you forward. And while those small choices may seem harmless in the moment, over time they add up to a life full of missed opportunities and unexplored potential. Discipline is the antidote to that drift. It keeps you moving toward what matters, even when the easier path is calling your name. The challenge is that discipline requires you to confront the truth about how you're spending your time. It forces you to look at the hours you lose to distractions, the commitments you keep that don't align with your goals, the habits that feel harmless but keep you stuck. This kind of honesty can be uncomfortable, but it's necessary. Because the moment you take full ownership of your time, you reclaim the power to shape your life. Discipline also teaches you the difference between urgency and importance. The world will always try to fill your schedule with urgent demands, emails, messages, last-minute requests, small fires that seem like they must be put out right now. But if you let urgency dictate your days, you'll end up exhausted without having moved an inch toward your real goals. Discipline is the quiet refusal to be ruled by urgency. It's the deliberate choice to prioritize the work that matters most, even if no one is watching, even if it won't pay off immediately. Many people think discipline is about restriction, about saying no to things you enjoy. But in truth, discipline is about freedom. Without it, you're trapped in cycles of procrastination and regret. With it, you gain the freedom to pursue your goals with clarity and purpose. You create space for what you truly value. You stop wasting time on what doesn't serve you because your days are already claimed by what does. It's important to understand that discipline is not something you either have or don't have. It's something you build. It's a muscle, and like any muscle, it grows with use. You don't start by overhauling your entire life in one day. You start by making one small commitment and keeping it. Then another. Each time you follow through, you strengthen your trust in yourself. You begin to see that you are capable of more than your excuses, and eventually showing up becomes your default. Discipline also protects your energy. When your time has structure, you don't waste mental effort deciding what to do next. You already know. That clarity saves you from the constant drain of indecision. And because your actions are intentional, you make measurable progress, which in turn fuels your motivation. This creates a loop where discipline feeds progress. Progress fuels motivation, and motivation strengthens discipline. One of the most powerful aspects of discipline is how it compounds over time. A single day of consistent effort may seem small, but when repeated, those days build momentum. Just as neglected time compounds into regret, disciplined time compounds into mastery. You may not notice the results right away, but one day you'll look back and see how far you've come, and it will be because you stayed consistent when it would have been easier to quit. The truth is, discipline is rarely glamorous. It often looks like early mornings, quiet work, uncelebrated choices. It's the decision to keep going when no one's applauding, when the results are still invisible, when the easier option is calling your name. But those moments are where the foundation is laid. Those are the moments that separate those who dream from those who achieve. If you want to stop wasting time, discipline is your greatest ally. It takes your limited hours and turns them into something meaningful. It ensures that you're not just busy, but productive. It keeps you from living reactively and puts you in control of your life's direction. And perhaps most importantly, it builds a quiet confidence, the kind that comes from knowing you can rely on yourself to follow through, no matter how you feel in the moment. Discipline is not about perfection. It's about persistence. You will slip at times. You will have days when you don't meet your own standards. But if you return to your structure, if you keep showing up, discipline will carry you further than bursts of inspiration ever could. Your dreams are built in the daily work, in the hours you commit, even when you'd rather do something else. That's where the transformation happens, not in the excitement of starting, but in the discipline of continuing. And when you look back years from now, you'll realize something powerful. The life you have was not created by chance, but by choice. Every disciplined moment was a brick laid in the foundation of your future. And that future will not be the result of luck. It will be the inevitable outcome of a life lived with intention. The people you allow into your life are not just companions along the way, they are architects, quietly shaping the foundation on which your future is built. Every conversation, every shared moment, every influence you absorb leaves an imprint on your thinking, your habits, and ultimately your destiny. We like to imagine ourselves as completely independent, immune to outside influence, but the truth is, human beings are deeply affected by their environment. If you spend enough time around someone, you start to mirror their thoughts, adopt their language, and unconsciously align your standards with theirs. This is why the quality of your circle matters far more than most people are willing to admit. If you surround yourself with people who are ambitious, disciplined, and forward-thinking, you will naturally rise to meet that energy. Not because they force you to, but because their presence shifts what you consider normal. When the people around you are striving for more, you feel inspired or even challenged to raise your own standards. You begin to see possibilities you might have ignored, and you start to believe that more is possible for you too. On the other hand, if your circle is filled with people who complain more than they act, who waste time instead of building, who settle instead of striving, then that too becomes your normal. You start to believe that stagnation is acceptable, that small dreams are enough, and that life is just something to be endured. The most dangerous part of a toxic or complacent circle is not that they will openly discourage you, but that they will slowly numb your desire for more. They won't always tell you not to grow. They'll just make you comfortable where you are. They'll normalize procrastination, normalize excuses, normalize mediocrity. And over time, without realizing it, you'll start to think that your unrealized potential is simply the way things are. This slow erosion of ambition is harder to detect than outright criticism, but it's far more dangerous because it feels harmless. Protecting your energy means setting boundaries around the influences you allow into your life. It means asking hard questions. Who am I becoming by being around these people? Do they challenge me to grow, or do they drain my energy? Do they celebrate my progress, or do they subtly pull me back into old patterns? These are not easy questions to answer, especially when the people in question have been in your life for years. But your future depends on your willingness to answer honestly. Sometimes protecting your circle means creating distance from certain relationships, not because you hate these people, but because you recognize that they are not aligned with the life you are building. It's not about judging them as bad people. It's about recognizing that their habits, mindset, or values are incompatible with your direction. You can still care for someone and decide that they cannot have a front row seat in your life. That's not cruelty, it's self-preservation. At the same time, surrounding yourself with the right people is not about chasing perfection or seeking out only those who have made it. It's about finding people whose presence inspires you to think bigger and act better. People who will hold you accountable when you start slipping. People who see your potential even when you doubt yourself. These are the kinds of relationships that don't just feel good, they make you better. And here's something most people overlook. Your circle is not just the people you physically spend time with. The books you read, the podcasts you listen to, the media you consume, all of these count as part of your environment. If you spend hours listening to negativity, drama, or empty entertainment, those influences seep into your mind just as much as a toxic friend would. On the other hand, if you consistently consume content that educates, inspires, and challenges you, you are effectively surrounding yourself with mentors and role models, even from a distance. Your environment is always shaping you, whether you notice it or not. The question is whether you are shaping it deliberately or letting it happen by accident. Choosing your circle is not a one-time decision. It's an ongoing process of evaluation and adjustment. As you grow, your needs will change, and so will the kind of people who can help you reach the next level. This means you may outgrow certain relationships, and that's not a sign of arrogance, it's a sign of evolution. The cost of keeping the wrong people close is not just emotional, it's practical. Every moment you spend with someone who drains you is a moment you're not spending with someone who could lift you higher. Every conversation that keeps you small is a conversation you could have been using to expand your vision. Over time, those choices add up, and the difference between a supportive circle and a toxic one can mean the difference between a life of quiet frustration and a life of meaningful progress. Your circle will either reinforce your excuses or fuel your growth. They will either anchor you to the person you've always been or help you become the person you're meant to be. The people closest to you will shape your standards, your beliefs, and your habits. And those three things will shape your destiny. That's why being intentional about your circle is not optional, it's essential. If you want to change your life, start by changing the people you give your time to. Seek out those who push you forward, who inspire you to aim higher, who remind you of your potential when you forget. Limit your exposure to those who drain your energy, who feed your doubts, who make comfort more appealing than growth. Because whether you realize it or not, you are becoming like the people you spend the most time with. And one day when you look at the life you've built, It will be a reflection not only of your choices, but of your circle. The only moment you truly possess is the one you are in right now. The past is untouchable, sealed away in memory. The future is an unformed possibility, not yet shaped, not yet real. And yet, most people live as though the present is disposable, trading it away for regrets about what has already happened or fantasies about what might happen someday. We treat the now as if it's just a bridge to somewhere better, forgetting that it is, in fact, the only place life is ever happening. When you think about your future, it's tempting to believe that it will be built by some version of yourself who is stronger, wiser, and more disciplined than you are today. You imagine that someday, when the conditions are right, you'll finally begin. But here's the truth. The future is nothing more than a long chain of present moments. If you waste this one, you'll waste the next. If you're not living with intention now, you won't magically start later. Change doesn't happen in the abstract. It happens in the now. The danger of living outside the present is that it makes action feel optional. You tell yourself you'll start when you have more time, when you're less tired, when the situation is perfect, but perfection never arrives. Life will always be messy, unpredictable, and inconvenient. If you keep waiting for ideal conditions, you'll find that your entire life has been a rehearsal for a performance that never begins. The now is all you get. If you don't use it, it disappears, taking its opportunities with it. And there's something else. The present moment is powerful, not just because it's all you have, but because it's the only place you can act. You can't do anything about the past except learn from it. You can't directly act in the future because it hasn't arrived yet. All of your choices, all of your progress, all of your growth, they happen here in this small slice of time you are currently inhabiting. The moment you truly understand this, procrastination loses its grip. You stop believing in later and start working with now. We also underestimate how much of our life we trade away by living in mental time travel. The mind loves to wander into old wounds or future worries. But while it's doing that, life is happening without you. You're physically present, but mentally elsewhere. And those moments you could have used to build something, connect with someone, or simply experience life, are gone forever. You can't get them back, and they can't be replaced. Focusing on the now doesn't mean you ignore the past or never plan for the future. It means you take the lessons of the past, the vision of the future, and bring them into the actions of today. You stop seeing the present as a waiting room and start treating it as the workshop where your life is built. Every small action you take now, reading one page, making one call, practicing for 10 minutes, becomes a brick in the foundation of your future. The truth is, the someday you're waiting for is just another today that will arrive and feel exactly like this one. If you can't act now, you won't act then. The discipline, the focus, the courage you think you'll have in the future are all forged in the present. The life you imagine is not a distant destination. It's the result of hundreds of present moments used wisely. There's a quiet tragedy in realizing that much of what people call wasting time is really wasting the present. Hours lost in distraction, days lost in avoidance, years lost in living for other people's expectations. All of it comes down to failing to value the only time you ever truly own. And because the loss is invisible in the moment, you don't feel the urgency until years later, when you look back and realize those nows are gone for good. Living in the now also changes how you experience life. When you fully inhabit the present, you notice things you would otherwise miss. The small details, the subtleties, the richness of each moment. You hear the way someone's voice changes when they talk about something they love. You notice the way the light falls in the room. You appreciate the quiet satisfaction of completing something you've been putting off. These things may seem small, but they are the raw material of life. If you ignore them, you miss the very texture of living. The challenge is that the modern world is built to pull you out of the now. Endless notifications, constant entertainment, the pressure to document instead of experience, all of these keep your attention scattered. If you want to reclaim the present, you have to fight for it. That means turning down the noise, creating space for focus, and deliberately choosing where your attention goes. It means understanding that every yes to distraction is a no to presence. And here's the paradox. When you live fully in the present, you actually shape the future far more effectively than when you obsess over it. By acting with intention now, you create momentum. By using your current moment well, you set up the conditions for the next moment to be even better. The future stops being a vague hope and starts becoming the natural result of your daily choices. The next time you catch yourself drifting into regret about the past or anxiety about the future, remind yourself, life is happening right here in this breath, in this choice. What you do now is not small, it is everything. Because in the end, your life will not be measured in years or decades, but in how you spent the countless nows that made them. If you waste them, you waste your life. If you honor them, you create a life worth living. If you strip away all the excuses, all the distractions, and all the noise, life becomes very simple. You have a limited amount of time, and what you choose to do with it determines everything. The call to focus on yourself is not about isolating from the world or living in selfishness. It's about taking responsibility for the one life you've been given. It's about realizing that every yes you give to what doesn't matter steals energy from what does. It's about protecting your mind from the weight of other people's expectations, surrounding yourself with those who push you higher, and using the only time you ever truly own, the present, to build the future you want. Because in the end, nobody else can live your life for you. Nobody else can use your hours, invest your energy, or create your destiny. That is your task alone. And when your final day comes, the question will not be how many people you pleased, how much you conformed, or how long you waited. It will be whether you lived on your own terms, with your own focus, and without wasting the time you were given. Choose now, not tomorrow, not someday. Guard your energy, sharpen your focus, and step into your life fully. Everything you want begins the moment you stop wasting your time, and that moment is right now.